Good evening and welcome to the June 3rd, 2024 meeting of the City of Summit Zoning Board of Adjustment. My name is Joe Steiner and I am the chair of the Zoning Board. Please rise and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. In accordance with New Jersey State Statute 10:4-10, adequate notice of this meeting has been provided to a newspaper of record and has been posted here at City Hall. This meeting is a judicial proceeding. Any questions or comments must be limited to the issues that are relevant to what the board may legally consider in reaching a decision, and decorum appropriate to a judicial hearing must be maintained at all times. For the benefit of the interested public, this meeting is being live streamed to the city's YouTube page and also being broadcast on Summit's governmental channel, which is Comcast Channel 34 and Verizon Channel 30. A transcript of this meeting is also being taken using the video and audio. So we need all speakers to utilize one of the microphones in the room. You may think we can hear you, and that's true, but they won't be able to hear you on the as they take the tape. So make sure that you come up and use one of the microphones. I probably should do the same. Please note that the fire exits are to my right, your left, and in the back of the room where you entered. The city has a listening system to assist the hearing impaired. If anyone needs the hearing assistance, please obtain the system at the dais and return it thereafter. Madam Secretary, would you call the roll, please?
Sure. Chairman Steiner?
Here.
Vice Chairman Loikitz?
Here.
Mr. Yuko is excused. Mr. Nelson is excused. Ms. Zahn is excused. Mr. Curran?
Here.
Mr. Malay?
Here.
Ms. Toth?
Here.
Ms. Chifo is excused. Mr. Feskins?
Here.
Mr. Chanchuli?
Here.
You have a quorum. You may proceed.
Thank you. Andy Ball is the city's zoning board attorney. He will be advising the board members on matters of law and is key interface with an applicant's attorney. He does not vote on the applications. Stephanie Sulios is a city employee and is the zoning board secretary. She works with applicants on preparing their applications, planning our agendas, and keeping our meeting minutes. Ms. Sulios also does not vote on the applications. Also present is Marie Raffi from Collier Engineering, our board engineering firm, who is seated at the table to our right, your left in the front. Also seated at that table is Ed Snikes from Burgess Associates, our board planner. Those experts provide input to the board and also do not vote on the applications. Our board consists of 7 regular members and up to 4 alternates. All members can participate in the hearings tonight, but a maximum of 7 can vote. Most applications require a simple majority to be approved. Before we enter executive session to vote on the application, you will be advised how many votes are required. Each case begins with the applicant or their attorney giving an overview of the application process to date and the variances that are required. We then hear from any additional expert witnesses that the applicant may have to help explain the application and why the variances are needed. The board members may ask questions of the applicant, their attorney, and the expert witnesses. Once the board members and the board professionals have completed their questioning, the public has an opportunity to ask questions. Now, this is not the time for you to tell us what you think about the application. That opportunity will come a little bit later. Before you ask your questions, again, come forward, use a microphone, and clearly state your name, spell your last name, and provide your address. It is important that our court reporter is able to keep a clear and accurate public record. After all the witnesses have been heard, members of the audience have the second opportunity to speak, and at that time, you may express your opinion, positive or negative, about the application. You will be sworn in order to do that. Then the public hearing is closed, and we enter into executive session where the board members discuss the case and vote. You will be able to listen to our executive session, but you will not normally be able to participate in our discussion. Our zoning officers have asked that we remind all applicants that they must read carefully the resolution that documents the zoning board's decision, and pay particular attention to the conditions that may be contained in that resolution. If a landscaping plan is required, you must obtain one and submit it to John Linson, the city's forester. If there's a grading plan required, you must have one prepared by a civil engineer and submit 3 copies along with the application fee to the city's engineering division. Failure to satisfy all the conditions in the resolution will result in a delay of approving your application, as it will cost extra work for the city zoning staff. The resolutions documenting the board's decision will normally be available 1 month after we decide the case. We're now going to go through the applications quickly and ask a couple of questions. What we're going to want to know when we call you up is how many witnesses you have and whether or not you think you can get this done in a half hour. So let's begin with 15 Caldwell Avenue, which is a carryover.
Good evening,
forward,
Thomas
please.
Bayo, architect for the applicant.
Come forward again.
Okay. Thomas Bayo, architect for the applicant. We are here, and I am the only witness aside from the homeowners.
And are the applicants here tonight?
Yes, they are.
Okay. Okay, thank you. You think you'll do it in a half hour?
I'm hoping under 5 minutes.
Okay, we'll try. Second one is Aaron and Lindsay Britt, 2 Kings Hill Court.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman, members of the board, Samantha Alfonso, and we have 2 direct witnesses, and we also have the engineer in case there are any questions of him, but we don't plan to call him unless there are specific questions.
And
30 to 45?
Pardon?
Hopefully 30, but potentially more like 45, 30 to 45.
Okay.
Thank you.
We'll try to expedite. And next would be Marcus and Jacqueline Ricciani at 235 Oak Ridge.
Hi, Marcus Ricciani, owner of 235 Oak Ridge Avenue. We do not have any witnesses other than ourselves. We expect to hopefully beat his 5 minutes. That's it.
Okay, you can try to beat it, but we'll see what happens. And the last one on our agenda tonight is Bristol Myers Squibb. And this is for the 556 Morris Avenue.
Yes, good evening, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. My name is Kevin Moore with the firm of Stevenson Lee. I represent Bristol Myers Squibb Company. I'd say 30 to 45 minutes.
And how many witnesses?
3.
Okay. Okay, so then we now know what we're going to do, and so we will begin with 15 Caldwell. This was heard at a meeting that I was not at, and those members of the board who were not here have signed off on certificates. If they have either, has everybody signed off? They're coming down. And that way they've read the transcript and/or watched the video of the hearing. So it's my understanding that there are basically 3 open items that need to be clarified. So I turn it over to you to clarify them.
Do I stand sworn in?
Yes, you do. You were sworn previously, and your credentials as an architect were accepted at that time. You remain under oath.
Are you
Thank you.
going to testify, sir?
Yes.
Okay, if he's going to
So
testify,
I'll
let's.
swear you in at this point. Do you swear from the testimony you're about to give in this matter is the truth, the whole truth, nothing but the truth?
Yes.
And please state your name, spell your last name.
First name Kevin, last name is Avedisian.
Thank you.
Okay.
So we stand before you with a revised cover sheet. So first and foremost, you have a revised cover sheet. The plans are not changed. They were the same plans approved in August of 2022. The Avedisians were not able to make the last hearing and are here tonight to provide any additional testimony you might need. I have since met with Krista Anderson, and I've agreed with all her numbers, and I concur with the May 17th zoning board memo to your board that our lot coverage is 49.9%, our building coverage is 30.3%, the floor area ratio is 38.88%, and the rear yard setbacks are 21 feet 7 inches at the deck and 25 feet 3 inches at the expanded kitchen.
Okay. I believe there was also something that has to be clarified relative to drainage.
We will be providing engineering as the application goes into the building department for all drainage, yes?
Okay, my reading of the text was different, that there was supposed to be testimony tonight.
I don't know that it was necessarily going to be tonight. I know we had questions about the drainage, and I believe the indication was that you planned to comply with submitting a stormwater management plan that meets all the city's requirements. I guess that's still the plan. You're not asking for any deviations from those?
No, it's going to require a meeting with the town engineer, and we'll accept whatever the engineer's conclusions are. We have a deck, in addition, replacing a lot of the existing deck. So that will happen, and we'll comply with it.
Marie?
So I was not at that meeting as well, but my notes from my colleague seem to agree with that. And I'm curious if anybody else had a different take on it, that they would be providing seepage pit calculations for engineering, and that they would have to remove their old pit. So just so you know that if it goes for engineering, it goes to the town engineer and not to me as the board engineer, so.
So these would be conditions that would be,
Right, that when they submit for a building permit, that they'll have to submit something for engineering to review. Not me engineering, but city engineering.
And I know we did discuss a condition last time that the applicants would submit a stormwater management plan to the city engineer specifically for review and approval.
That's correct.
As testified, it looks like they're planning on complying with everything. There won't be any deviations. Whatever the number the city engineer says, they'll meet it. Otherwise, they have to show up back here and ask for more relief.
you don't really want to do.
I don't. This is 3.
Any questions from Tom? You have anything?
No, nothing to add.
Okay. Any questions from the board members? Okay, and are we happy with the numbers that Krista, we used Krista's numbers?
I presume so. Our office did not review this application.
Okay.
So I can't really opine on it.
But you're certifying that you're
We
using
are.
Krista's numbers?
Yes.
Okay. As some of you may know, Krista retired too, so.
Mr. Chairman, if you could, just recap what they've asked for and the conditions as a final,
Okay,
just for the record, and to make it clean.
The conditions are that we would accept Krista Anderson's memo to your board from May 17, 2024. We will be applying for an engineering permit from the city of Summit and a building permit at the same time, and we'll be providing cross-sections and drywall calculations for what the decision between myself and the engineer is. And there was an open matter about the movement of the shed. It's currently on the property line, a little bit over. I've spoken with homeowners. They've agreed to move it that 1 foot into the property. So it'll reside completely on our property. I don't think there were any conditions other than those 3.
Also, so we have 4 noted from the last hearing. 1 is our usual compliance with the conditions noted in the board engineer's memorandum. Second, as you just mentioned, the applicants shall relocate the encroaching shed, so that's 1 foot off the property line. The shed shall be screened. Third, the applicant shall submit a landscaping plan to the city forester for review and approval. And then fourth, as we've just discussed, the applicant shall submit a stormwater management plan to the city engineer for review and approval.
Okay. Those are accepted.
And then to recap, just the specific variances the applicants are looking for. Lot coverage is 49.9%, 45% is the maximum. Building coverage, they're proposing 30.3%, 20% is the maximum. Floor area ratio, 38.88%, 35% is the maximum. Rear yard setback to the addition is 25 foot 3 inches. To the proposed deck is 21 foot 7 inches. And then technically, they would also need a variance for that relocated shed with the 1-foot rear yard setback.
Okay.
I have a question
Does
on
that
the
answer-
setbacks for the...
Thank you.
Is that what you
Yep.
understood to be?
Yes.
Okay.
Okay.
Any further, any,
Yeah, I have a question on the setbacks for the shed. I always thought those numbers were more. I always thought a shed was like 7 off the rear and 4 off the side.
And that's why they're asking for a variance.
Yes.
Because
Oh,
it
okay.
currently encroaches
But
on,
that's still the case, it's at 7 and 4, is that what it is?
I can't remember the number off the top of my head, but I could try to look it up as
Yeah,
we're
that's all.
discussing,
I just-
but.
but that's why they're asking for a
Yeah.
variance.
Yeah, it currently encroaches onto the neighboring property. They're proposing to move it back onto their
Yes.
property and have a 1-foot setback from the property line.
That almost rises to where the benefit is to the public. We would improve something that's been there for 40 years.
And,
It's an old shed.
okay.
Yeah.
Mr. Chairman,
Okay. Any other questions from the board? Yes, sir.
just one follow-up question with regard to Krista being retired. Do you require to do any changes to your actual zoning table as part of the document that's been submitted?
No, that's a new
As
document I
result,
did submit.
You have a new submission? with-
Yes.
With Krista's numbers, thank you.
Correct, that cover
Just wanted
sheet
to
that
be
was
sure.
submitted to the Cilios last, 2 weeks ago is the handout.
Thank you.
And you, those numbers were reviewed and they're
Yes.
right?
Yep.
Okay. Just trying to make sure we don't see them again. Okay, anything else you would like to present?
No, sir.
Anything from you, sir?
no.
We swore you in, so we might.
I exceeded my
Okay.
time limit.
Okay. Then we will, we've already, okay. Is there anyone in the public that would like to ask a question of these witnesses? Seeing none, I'm going to skip right on over to, is there anyone who would like to express an opinion in regards to this particular application? Seeing none, we've already given out we've all heard the conditions, we did them a little bit out of order. And so we will move into executive session. How many votes are required?
There is a variance of 5 votes are required.
So 5 votes in order to pass it. Who would like to kick off our discussion in executive session?
Well, how about, I can certainly support this. I think we've set a record for diving down the rabbit hole, beating a dead horse, pick your bromide. But we have finally dotted every I and crossed every T and agreed on the numbers behind the approval applicant got almost 2 years ago. So I would be very happy to put this to bed.
Okay, anybody else?
Looking at the zoning board officer, I see that all our concerns were addressed and they accepted the revised on May 17 memorandum, so I do support this application.
Okay. Anyone else? Okay, I think we've looked at the public safety end. We've looked at the drainage. We've hit a lot of the issues that we need to make sure have been covered so that we can support this if ever challenged. So I would accept a motion to approve this application.
So moved. Second.
Roll call vote, please.
Vice Chairman Loikett,
Yes.
Mr. Kieran,
Yes.
Mr. Malay,
Yes?
Ms. Toth,
Yes.
Mr. Feskins,
Yes.
Mr. Chanchuli,
Yes.
Chairman Steiner.
Yes.
The motion carries.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chairman, thank you, Board.
And again, please read the resolution and follow.
Will do, thank you.
Thank you. Okay, Aaron and Lindsay Britt to Kings Hill Court.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman, members of the board, Samantha again, of Alfonso and Weber. Yes, okay, thank you. Thank you. Here on behalf of Aaron and Lindsay Bell. This is regarding their property at 2 Kings Hill Court. Everybody can see the rendering that we're showing on the screen is what we are proposing, substantially similar to look like this from the street. This is really to fill out the second story. They're adding a second story addition over what is an existing split level home. The current home is not consistent architecturally with those around it and in the neighborhood. This is really meant to bring it more inconsistent with the neighborhood while providing more functional living space for the family. With that, to realize those improvements, they will require 2 variances, one for floor area ratio. They proposed 31.6%, where 25% is permitted, and a combined side yard setback of 27%, where 35% is required, and 27% is existing. So that is being maintained. The side yard setback is not changing. They're really just vertically adding an addition, but they are asking for that variance here because it's a continuation of the variance since they are adding in line. The combined side yard setback is really a direct result of the trapezoidal shape of the property. Let me pull up our plans, the latest revision, May 28th. 2024, and that was to address some of the comments. They were minor comments, but we wanted to try to address them for the board this evening. Okay. So there you can see the trapezoidal funky shape of the lot that really makes this combined side yard setback necessary because it is based on the widest part. The calculation is based on the widest part of the lot, but it, it applies to the entire lot, including the narrowest part near the home. Okay. Okay, and the FAR is really mostly a function of the attic space that is over 7 feet. We still needed a variance at 28% originally before we had included the attic space mistakenly. We were told by the zoning officer and then filed a new plan showing all of the attic space that is above 7 feet to confirm that we needed 557 square feet additional in FAR space. That is not usable space, not livable space. Excuse me, it is usable, but it is accessed from a pull-down ladder still. Okay, and that is to create the 8-on-12 roof pitch that is recommended and suggested by the DRO. We have the applicants and their architect here to provide testimony, and I'd like to start with the applicants if we can.
We're going to swear you in at this point.
No questions from the board then. I'll swear you in. If you could each raise your right hand, whoever's testifying.
Stand.
Sure. Do you swear affirm the testimony you're about to give in this matter is the truth, the whole truth, nothing but the truth? And one at a time, please state your name, spell your last name.
Aaron Bell, B-E-L-L.
Lindsay Bell, with an AY.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. Aaron, Lindsay, you own the property together?
Yes.
And tell me a little bit about your existing home and what brought you here.
So our current home is a 1960s split level, built on the side of a hill in the Woodland Hills division of Summit. We have 3 bedrooms on the main floor and a master suite on the top floor, which kind of feels like we're on different levels from each other. It has an awkward shaped lot, right, which Sam has already provided in the drawings. And at the moment, we have our entire master on the top floor. We have the kids down on the bottom floor. So that's how kind of we're set up at the moment. It's basically one main floor and then a master by itself up top.
And I noticed, Aaron, when I was driving by, when you go up to Kings Hill Court, you're going uphill, right?
Correct.
And then behind you, your rear yard is also
Yes.
pretty steeply sloped.
Yeah, it slopes towards the front of the house and down the hill. So it's kind of 2 slopes.
Yeah. You're kind of tucked into the slope, right?
Correct.
Thank you.
Correct.
Can you please describe your proposal?
Yeah, sure. So our, as I stated, our current home has the kids' 3 bedrooms on the main floor, right? And in 2016, we tried to open up our house a little bit. Our kitchen was compartmentalized into a dining room and a tiny kitchen. And we had a 3rd kid and realized we didn't have enough space, so we expanded our kitchen, expanded that side of the house. And, kids grow up and they get bigger and your house starts to become very small very quickly. So we realized we needed to expand in some manner, right? The renovation 2016 did not do what we thought it was going to do. So what we have decided to do is to bring the kids' bedrooms upstairs to our floor, right? This was a confluence of a few different events. 1, that the kids needed proper study space. 2, that, there have been some burglaries in our neighborhood. We had our son in bed with us for a couple weeks because he was scared to sleep on the floor by himself down there. And we feel that, Lindsay and I are almost living on a different level than the kids at times, especially at nighttime. A lot of the closet space in our bedroom is 1970s walk-through closets where you have to walk through a closet to get to another. Again, we have, I think, 4 or 5 different closets in our master.
4 closets.
And
None of them are near each other.
And they're spread out all over the place. It was just built a long time ago. So we're trying to get the property more with the times, commensurate with the neighborhood, looking similar to the nature of the rest of the houses around us.
Thank you. And did you have a chance to review the administrative reports of the board's professionals?
Yes, we looked at all of them.
And you agree with them, subject to the comments of your professionals?
Yes, absolutely.
Thank you. And did you have a chance to speak with your neighbors?
We did. Yeah, we spoke with all the neighbors that are bordering our property. Most of them, I think all of them were in favor of it. There was one neighbor that had a question about the height of our roof, and we gave her our architect's name and assured her the height was
I
not.
think she might be here tonight, right?
Yep.
Thank you. So if you have any other questions, feel free. Okay. And that's all I have for our applicants at this point. If the board
Okay.
has any
Questions for the board? Questions from our professionals for the applicants?
So there was no engineering comments. There's really a very small amount of additional impervious coverage. So there was no engineering comments. We don't have any problems with drainage or anything.
Okay. I know your company did the report in lieu of Krista, so I don't know if you have comments on that or not.
No questions for this witness.
Okay, thank you. All right, questions from the audience. This is the time to ask questions of these 2 witnesses. Seeing none, do you have other witnesses?
Yes, thank you. We have our architect.
Good evening. Good evening.
I'll swear you in. Do you swear from the testimony you're about to give in this matter is the truth, the whole truth, nothing but the truth?
I do.
Please state your name, spell your last name.
Richard J. Pierce, P-I-E-R-C-E.
Thank you, and can you just, when was the last time you appeared before the
About
board?
a year ago, I believe,
Okay.
last fall or last summer.
Any changes to your credentials since the last time you were here?
No.
I imagine the board would like to accept you once again.
Yep, let's go ahead.
Great, thank you. Again, my name is Rich Pierce. I'm a residential architect. I work out of Cranford. The Bells approached me a little while back, about expanding their pretty much dormered second floor. It is a split, it's kind of an odd split, it's not half level difference, it's only a couple of steps difference, but it is a split. And their master bedroom was on the upper level, basically a dormered second floor. That's kind of what they're talking about with the attics and with the closets being spread out. They kind of, wherever the roof height was high, they were putting a closet, and wherever it was low, they had to build out and have a little space to go in and out. Their master bedroom right now is almost a full floor away from the 3 other bedrooms, and that was a driving force in this along the way. The variances that we are going for, one is for the combined yard setback, which, because of the trapezoidal shape of the lot, and because the calculation states it should be from the front of the lot, we don't meet it at the narrower portion of the lot. If you took the halfway point of our house, I think we meet it at that point, so it was about the average. We are not looking to decrease our existing non-conforming condition. We're looking simply to go straight up and make it a full second floor. Driving around the neighborhood, it's a predominantly 2.5-story neighborhood. Almost all of them are full second floors, or mostly full second floors, with a lot more horizontal expansion. There's not really much of a chance to do any horizontal expansion on this site because of the trapezoidal shape, but also because of the extreme grade on the site. I remember when they called me to come, I believe it was early in the winter, and we had a storm, and I remember looking on Google Earth going, I'm not sure if we can make it up there. They got a pretty steep driveway and a steep site, but we were able to get there. In the back of their house, the back of their property is very limited because they have a pretty large retaining wall. So it's a decent sized lot, but not a lot of usable space. So going up was also, we could not only work with the program, but they were also looking to conserve what little bit of level space they have in the yard. The FAR is, if we didn't have to have a full-size attic with a steep roof, and we also have a 2-story space above the entryway, which has to count towards floor area also. If we were not having to, those 2 items, we would be close to the 25% FAR. Without it, I believe we're at 33. If you took the attic out of the calculation, I think we'd be at 26 or 27, so a little bit more than what is allowed. But they wanted to get the 4 bedrooms in on that main floor. They, from the beginning, it was about the kids and getting their bedrooms on the same level as the parents and giving everybody a decent amount of space, giving them a proper master bedroom suite to match the neighborhood and what is out there. So basically what we're looking at is trapezoidal site, not increasing any existing non-compliant conditions, and a slight bump in the FAR, basically to accommodate the plus 7-foot areas of the attic, which is not, there's no stairs to this attic, it's just a pull down, so it's just gonna be for storage, and that area above the main entrance, which we had a 2-story space. So those are kind of what the bump ups of the FAR come to.
Any other questions from you, from the attorney? Any questions from our professionals?
Just 2 quick questions. You had mentioned where the combined side yard setback actually complies. You said it's about midway on the side of the home?
It complies in the front, about the midway is where the calculations come in.
So to leave the...
Correct.
Okay, so it's the rear
It's
portion.
towards the rear, correct.
Okay.
And if you're looking at it from the street, obviously you cannot tell lot lines from the street. It looks fine, it's just that the side property lines are converging towards the rear.
Okay. What in the architectural design on the second floor provides relief from the mass of the structure? Typically, FAR, we also look at the mass or the size
Mhm.
of the home.
We did work on articulating the front on the left-hand side, bumping it out a little bit to match the garage below. We also have the roof eaves that it's part of the existing house above the garage. We tried to replicate that on the second floor, and then on the right-hand side at the entryway and the above the right-hand side of the house, small roof eaves and slight setbacks to break up the massing. We're also looking to keep the existing brick on the lower portion of the house to break up the larger expansive siding or anything else.
Okay, that lower portion.
Mhm.
Okay. You had mentioned the two-story space plus the attic. It brought the number down to approximately, I had 28% in the opening statement.
It may be 20.
That didn't include this
Okay.
portion though?
Yeah, there is a
So
small
if you include
two-story
this
space.
portion, what does
I
that
think it
come
brings it down to 27.
I'm sorry, you're pointing to this portion.
Oh.
Sorry.
It's a-
Where the
So-
circular window is
I'll show you.
Sorry, I couldn't see
This
which one.
circular, yeah. You explain.
That area is above the entryway. It's a two-story space. It's whatever, 40, 50, 60 feet, square feet, and I don't have it off the top of my
So
head.
that when you walk in.
You walk in, you
it's
see
a
that. But
high
unfortunately, the
ceiling
zoning-
with that-
All right, one at a time. We can't really record it if you
No,
are
I
all
apologize.
talking at the same time.
I'll take it.
So from the witness, please.
The area above that is even though there's no floor there, it is counted as floor area in the floor area ratio calculation.
No further questions. Thank you.
Thank you.
Questions from the board? Yes, sir. Oh, I thought.
Oh.
Thought you-
Good.
I was going to, Ms. Alfonso had spoken about the attic existing to get the roof pitch correct. If you did not add the additional floor area ratio due to the attic, what would the roof pitch look like?
So right now, it's on about 8 by 12, 8.5 on 12
Mhm.
pitch. To bring it down lower, yeah, it'll be a lot flatter. I mean, down to maybe 3.5, 4.5 on 12, which is the minimum for an asphalt shingle roof. Not going to look really great with this style. Definitely not going to look like anything in the neighborhood. It would probably bring the FAR down quite a bit because we would not really have almost any 7-foot spaces in there. So it's also now not usable much as storage.
Mhm. Okay, thank you.
Other questions
Yeah.
from the board?
Had a similar question, but what was the height of, what's the current height on the left side versus the proposed height?
You mean on the garage side?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think the difference in the existing highest point in the roof and the new highest point is about 6 feet. And we are under the maximum height.
And I had one more question that probably belongs to the engineer, but you're the one who's sworn in now. And you did speak to the side yards, because the survey states the lot width is 136.17, but that's not indicated on the survey, and I don't have my cute little triangle ruler thing to verify that, so do we know that?
We do have Andrew Clark here who did the
I
survey.
know,
So
it
we
just
can have
seems
him
like a
come
lot
up
to
and-
swear him in for that one, somebody else can answer it.
That's taken,
Yeah, that's taken at the required front yard setback,
Okay, thank
which
you.
is what's called out in the
the
ordinance.
widest point.
Yeah.
At the, their actual lot width is 154.
Well, but that's before the front of the house, so.
That's the front, that is the width at the front lot line.
Okay, right, but Krista Anderson had always insisted that the calculation be done at the front of the house.
At the setback.
At the
And that's
at the setback.
correct, and that's why it's only 137.
That's it,
That's the one
yeah,
that you're asking
yep. Thank you. He knows what.
Can you go through the massing that you are proposing on the roof, or the second story, how you, got to that point? I understand you're talking about backing out the attic space, the two-level foyer, it still leaves you about 600 square feet above.
Mhm.
Can you just go through the thought process, the design, the elements that you ended up going to this layout, and why?
Sure. As I always tell my clients, I try to work from the inside out, work with their programs and see what we can do. And we're trying to get 4 bedrooms, one of them being a master bedroom suite. I believe we have the laundry up there, and then each of the kids have their own substantial closet space, and then there's the additional bathrooms. We really shrunk everything down, trying to get everything shrunk everything down to fit the existing second floor, first floor space. So we're basically using the existing perimeter of the house and going straight up.
Is that for ease of constructability, or is that from design point of view?
A little bit of both. Definitely from design, the fact that we were trying to make sure we can get all this space within the existing footprint. We do cantilever out the back about 2 feet for the middle portion of the house, just to make the back bedrooms work. No real existing, no existing impervious surface because it's over a patio that's down below. But, you know, a de minimis amount of increase in building coverage, 2 foot by about 15 or 20 feet. I don't have the plan open.
Is that the bump out in bedroom 1?
Correct. And if you look at the first existing first floor below that, there already is a bump out. We were just doing a slight cantilever further.
And you really can't add to the back or the side, right? Because of the, you're already at maximum for the side yards, right?
Correct. They don't have that much level space in the backyard. They have a very large, probably a good third to half of their backyard is taken up by the retaining wall. They do have a small patio area. They didn't want to remove any of that for recreation space, so now the recreation space is on the level above the garage.
And we're compliant on everything else, right? Height, lot coverage, building coverage,
Correct.
well within.
Jay, does that answer your question?
I keep thinking about, if we forced you to, how would you shave some square footage off?
I think we would ultimately have to move one of the bedrooms downstairs.
I mean, they're quite generous sized bedrooms, 15 by 19, 17 by 17.
They're not overly huge for second and third bedrooms, but that's what we would have to do. We'd probably move one of the entire bedrooms down to the other level, and that's the whole reason why this project was started. Good enough?
Works.
Thanks.
Any other questions? Okay, any questions from the audience for this witness? I see none. Do you have any other witnesses?
I'd like to see if Mr. Hope would still like to hear from Andrew, or you?
I'm sorry, I'm having trouble hearing you.
Figured he's here anyway.
I know.
Okay. Thank you. I would reach to the Florence discussion then, unless you want
Okay,
to.
speak. All right, so, conditions?
Actually, none noted so far. There's no engineering memorandum, so we don't have our usual condition here. I didn't hear anything noted.
Okay. Then we will ask the public if they have anything that they wish to comment on this particular application, positive or negative. Seeing none, I gather we should move into executive session. How many votes are required?
There is, once again, a D variance. 5 votes are required.
Once again, we're at 5. Okay, who would like to start? Jay, you have the longest question.
So there's 2 proposed variances. The side yard setback to me is a no-brainer. It's a constrained lot, trapezoidal. The overall massing, I think they're trying to explain what they're really asking for, but the reality is they're building the same story up. Design-wise, it makes sense. Constructability, it makes sense. I can be in favor of this.
Okay, anyone from this side?
I do support this as well. I see that most of the issues are existing conditions and the setbacks, and it's a minor change. And this this house will look much better and will be more suitable for the neighborhood, and I do support this application.
Okay, any other comments?
Yeah, I too can support it. I think much of the FAR variance is driven by the roof pitch, and you're sort of caught between two different portions of the DRO. This is the better looking result. And although it really isn't a major factor, the backyard is well screened, and the proposed renovation will clean up a lot of jumbled roof lines and fenestration in the back of the house that at least the residents will be able to appreciate. So I do can support this application.
Okay. The one thing that hit me real hard is the safety consideration. No child in the city of Summit should have to sleep in their parents' bed because they're scared. And if this solves that problem, I don't have any more to say about it. This is what we should be doing. So hopefully you can add that in somehow. And I would accept a motion to approve this application.
So,
Second. Give it to him.
He's got a louder voice than you do.
Vice Chairman Loikis,
Yes.
Mr. Kieran,
Yes.
Mr. Malay,
yes?
Ms. Toth,
Yes.
Mr. Feskins,
Yes.
Mr. Chanchuli,
Yes.
Chairman Steiner.
Yes,
The motion carries.
thank you.
Thank you. Good luck.
Okay, just gonna keep on trucking. Marcus and Jacqueline Ricciani. This is for 235 Oak Ridge Avenue.
Yes. Marcus Ricciani, owner of 235 Oak Ridge Avenue, last name Ricciani, R-I-C-C-I-A-N-I.
And we're gonna
I will
swear you
swear
in.
you in. And if both of you testifying, if you could each raise your right hand? All right, we'll do both of you just to be sure. If you could each raise your right hand. Do you swear affirm the testimony you're about to give in this matter is the truth, the whole truth, nothing but the truth?
Yes.
And one at a time, please state your name, though we got your last name already.
Jacqueline Ricciani, R-I-C-C-I-A-N-I.
Marcus Ricciani,
Thank you.
R-I-C-C-I-A-N-I.
Okay.
So 235 Oak Ridge Avenue is a new construction, new build. We are in the final phases of getting a CO. The one item that's preventing us from getting a CO is what we're here to talk about. In our driveway, when you pull up to the driveway, we have 3 garage doors, and then we have a people door space. Behind that is a retaining wall. The property slopes from backwards to frontwards. So there's a retaining wall that holds the property in, sort of holds the dirt, and then you have a space that has the people door to the garage, and then three garage doors. During and then if you, on the original plans on the far right corner, there was a large planter there. During construction, question from the contractor was, do you really want this planter there, because it kind of gets in the way, and so we didn't put it there. We omitted the planter, not understanding why the planter was initially put in place, but we omitted the planter because it got in the way from a person pulling out or into that third garage bay. Attempting to get our CO, we learned from zoning, that was there, I guess, apparently to block a potential parking spot, because you're not permitted to park that close to a property line, is my understanding. So our application here is to omit that parking spot. It's not visible by our side neighbor, it's not visible by our back neighbor, it's definitely not visible by the neighbor on the other side of the house. It's consistent with all of the other driveways, a few to each side of us. And functionality, it allows us to back out of that third garage door without hitting what would be a planter. And then in the near term, we will have a 17-year-old driver, and that person will not be parking in the garage because one, we don't have 1 or 2, and 2, there's no space left in the garage. But she will pull her car up to the far right at night versus parking back in the driveway or having to leave it on the street. Make sense?
Yeah, I would say from a safety perspective, we prefer to drive down our driveway front first when we exit, rather than back into the street. And if that planter is there, we would not be able to do that when exiting that third garage bay. We would be forced to back down the driveway, which I personally prefer not to do, and I definitely would not want necessarily my children or my babysitter, or frankly, my husband doing.
Okay, you've submitted photographs to us, which I'm not sure if I'm reading them all right, but they're supposed to demonstrate the hardship.
Yes, so the photos that you have, so Exhibit 1 is just an illustration of the space, the retaining wall. You'll see the white chalked ground, that's where the planter would be. And then further back, you see the view of what it looks like from the road, which as you start to look at some of the other exhibits in Exhibit 2, the neighboring properties from the road view, you'll see it's a similar style driveway up to some sort of an ending. There's aerial views to the best we can get them, and then there's the street view. The Exhibit 3 is an illustration. It's a very high-tech, fancy illustration of if the planter were there, represented by the garbage cans, the third garage door would, you back out of that, you'd cut the wheel, you turn, you would hit it, which would then require you to pull forward, pull back, pull forward again in order to get out of there.
And these photographs were taken when and by whom? And
The photographs were taken by me. There's snow on the ground, so you can see it was taken in the January, February timeframe.
okay.
And just to be clear, that the variance allows it to stay as it is. Nothing would get constructed upon receiving the variance.
It's not forcing you to put it in.
Correct.
Okay. All right. And you have no witnesses, right?
Correct.
Okay. Any questions from our professionals?
No, I have no questions. It looks to me like there's a minor increase in the impervious coverage. They have a seepage pit, and that they've demonstrated that the seepage pit can handle that. So there's no concerns from a drainage standpoint.
Okay. Questions from the board?
I'm just confused. You made a statement, 21 square feet for impervious surface doesn't concern me. The functionality of a K-turn is, okay, I get it. But you said it was denied when you put it in because you weren't allowed to park there from a zoning point of view?
So
Maybe I can jump in. So the variance that they're asking for is because the parking area is located outside the buildable area. So that's the reason the planter was proposed there, is to prevent that small area from being used in theory for parking. So that's the variance that they are prompted by removing the planter.
If you park there, though, don't you basically block the third garage door?
So if I have a fourth car there, we have someone turning 17 shortly. If I have a fourth car, I have to put it somewhere. The third garage door is the least used car. So that car is, well, it's the first one out in the morning because she's going to school. But I gotta put it somewhere.
Yeah.
So the option is to put it as far up and as I can. And then if I have to do a K-turn to get that third one out, I do. But if that planter's there, then the third car would be sort of behind it, and then you would block driveway, or garage door 2 and 3, and one you can probably manage around.
It looked like you could probably just back out all the way out if you had to out of that third garage door, right? Even with the car parked there?
I mean,
Technically, but it's, I wouldn't, we've had a car parked there, and it's easier to move the car than to try and maneuver.
We should mandate that they buy a smart car.
To be fair to UConn.
She's gonna have a tank. The high schooler will end up with a tank.
I was actually confused when I was at the property. I thought you were talking about taking down those existing planters.
No.
And you're asking not to build a planter.
I don't want
so-
to, we want to leave it as it is.
Yeah, okay.
Okay. I'm just a little curious about the history, because you stated, at the beginning of your testimony that you didn't understand why it was there, although somebody had to get this building permit. Did you build the house? Did you buy it from a builder?
We designed it, we built it. During construction, the retaining wall is a two-tiered retaining
Right.
wall.
Mhm.
Because a flat wall looks terrible.
Right.
And during that, our goal was to have two-tiered and sort of put the flowers and all that you see there, because it's more aesthetically pleasing.
Mhm.
Our assumption was the architect went a little overboard on planters. So, yeah, that's sort of how it came about.
We thought it was aesthetics until we went to close out our permit and found out it was not aesthetics. It was instead to prohibit the parking of a car there. But we had never discussed that with the architect.
So where's the basketball net moving to?
Right now, it's in the planter.
Right now
it's in the planter.
Let's hope, if people start using it, it'll probably get moved left, so it's in the center of the driveway.
Well, that'll be in the way when somebody tries to get out of door 3.
It'll be in the way, no, if you've got it in the center, pushed back in front of the stairs, or next to the stairs.
Okay.
I just wish my kids used that basketball net.
Okay. But again, we're looking at it for the future going on. Any other questions? You didn't have any?
No,
did
what
you?
I was going to offer is, this is adjacent to the retaining walls. So those retaining walls are actually holding the soil back from the neighboring property. So essentially, this area will be lower than the neighboring property.
There's also very thick trees on top of the retaining wall. You can't see at all.
Yeah, it's
on
in the
neighbor's
picture.
house.
No other questions? Any questions from the audience, from the public? No questions from the public. They're all shaking their heads. And did we put any conditions in?
So we have a usual condition of compliance with those conditions noted in the board engineer's memorandum. That's all I have noted.
Okay. And number of votes needed?
Just 4. There's no D variance here, so it's majority of 4.
Okay. If anyone from the public would like to tell us what they think about this application, this is now the time to do that. No questions, no comments? Anything you'd like to say in conclusion?
No.
Okay. Who would like to start? We're going to move into executive session. Would anyone like to start?
I can support this application. I think the impact to the neighbors is de minimis. Improvement to safety and functionality of the home, I think makes sense, so can be supportive.
Okay. Anyone else? Or have we covered it?
We've covered it.
We've
Well,
covered it.
The only thing I could add is, although any decision we reach is not precedental, this is not the first time, even this year, that we have approved parking outside of the buildable area where it was not visible to any of the neighbors.
Right.
And where parking in the buildable area, say if your daughter pulled in directly behind garage door 3, becomes awkward at best.
So we're making an awkward situation better.
Yes, sir.
Works for me. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Vice Chairman Licketts,
Yes.
Mr. Kieran,
Yes.
Mr. Malay,
Yes.
Ms. Toth,
Yes.
Mr. Feskins,
Yes.
Mr. Chanchuli,
Yes.
Chairman Steiner.
Yes.
The motion carries.
Good luck. We will now move on to
Um,
Bristol Myers
I
Squibb.
suspect this is going to be a lengthy one. Could we stretch our legs for 5 minutes?
You want a 5-minute break? You got it.
Yeah, I do. Let them get assort
You got it.
themselves.
They'll get all the easels up.
Yes, something like that.
So we'll take an easel break.
They did say 30 to 45 minutes.
You did? back in session. And the next case is Bristol Myers Squibb, and their attorney is before us.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the board, good evening. For the record, my name is Kevin Moore with the firm of Stevens and Lee, and I represent the applicant before you this evening, Bristol Myers Squibb Company. I provided notice to all owners within 200 feet by certified mail and all others required by law to receive notice on May 7th, 2024, and the notice was also published in the May 10th, 24 edition of the Star Ledger. I would request that the board take jurisdiction of this matter.
Yes, we can do that.
Thank you.
And counsel, before we get started, I did just want to note for the record, we had a memorandum from our zoning officer and our planner noting that a D1 variance was required. I just want to clarify, as we had emailed back and forth and confirmed with everyone on the board side, this is in fact a D2 variance. It's an expansion of a pre-existing nonconformity. So we're on that lesser standard of a D2 and not a D1. Is that
Thank you, Mr. Ball. The property which is the subject of this application is 556 Morris Avenue here in Summit. It's block 700, lots 1, 92, 93, and 94 on your city tax map. The property is 90.09 acres in area, and it is in the city's PROD, Planned Research Office Development Zone. As we are seeking 3 items of relief from you this evening. The first, as Mr. Ball alluded to, is a D2 use variance from section 35-9.A3B of the DRO, which prohibits above-ground accessory storage tanks throughout the city. And we are seeking the D2 variance to permit the addition of 2 accessory liquid nitrogen storage tanks to the existing 4-tank storage facility that is already in the vicinity of the building S12 parking lot. We are also seeking a C2 bulk variance approval from section 35-9.8C2 of the DRO to permit the 2 accessory liquid nitrogen storage tanks to be 29 feet in height, where a maximum height of 15 feet is otherwise permitted. We are also seeking amended preliminary and final major site plan approval for the addition of the 2 accessory liquid storage tanks to the existing storage tank facility. And finally, we don't really think it's required, but to the extent it is required, we are seeking a design waiver / exception from section 35-14.1P2 of the DRO for the screening of the storage tank facility. I have 3 witnesses this evening. My first witness will be Mr. Christopher Cerati, who's with Langen Engineering and Environmental Services, Inc. He's our project site civil engineer, and he will describe the overall site, the liquid nitrogen storage tanks, and their location. My second witness will be Mr. Andrew Dropstead. He is the CTO Capital Project Manager for Global Product Development, Supply, Cell Therapy Operations for Bristol Myers Squibb Company, and he will describe the operation of and the need for the liquid nitrogen storage tanks. Finally, my third witness will be Mr. James Kyle of Kyle plus McManus Associates, and he is our project planner, and he will provide the planning support for the D2 and C2 variances and to the extent required for the design exception waiver. We'll be presenting 8 exhibits to you tonight. I've given Ms. Zulios and Mr. Ball copies of the exhibit list. They are pre-marked. The first one is Exhibit A1, and that's entitled BMS N2 Expansion Transportation Route for LN2 Delivery Truck within BMS Campus, drawing number A1. It's prepared by Mr. Cerati. It is dated today. And it's also the overall vicinity map for the site as well. Exhibit A2 is the overall site plan. It's sheet CS100, mounted and colored basically, and it's prepared by Mr. Cerati, dated February 9th, 2024. Exhibit A3 is the BMS site layout, grading, and utility plan, CS101, also prepared by Mr. Cerati, also dated February 9th, 2024. Exhibit A4 is BMS Summit N2 expansion construction details. That's CS501, That's also prepared by Mr. Sarati, and that is also dated February 9th, 2024. Exhibit A5 is a photo array we entitled Existing Photos, also prepared by Mr. Sarati, dated today. Exhibit A6 is a second photo array, which we call Existing Photos 2, also prepared by Mr. Sarati, also dated today. Exhibit A7 is BMS N2 expansion sections, is sightline sections, so we'll show that the tanks are not visible to the neighbors from the property line. It is likewise dated today. And then Exhibit A8, our final exhibit, is entitled BMS N2 expansion transportation route for LN2 delivery truck within the city of Summit. Drawing number A4, prepared by Mr. Sarati, also dated today. Would also request that the board incorporate into the record all the submitted applications, plans, and materials into the record this evening. And with that, I'd like to call Mr. Sarati.
I have a question
Any
for
questions?
the owner.
Any questions for the attorney?
Yes, I have a question. First of all, I see that there are 5 existing.
Four
Yeah,
existing
because the
tanks.
application shows 5, and the drawings, they show 4. So there was a discrepancy in the application that we have on the first page. Okay, but the answer, I got it now, they are 4.
Four existing,
When
two
were
proposed.
when were they installed, and were there any variances related to those?
I don't, they were installed so long ago that I do not know if there were variances, if that prohibition was even in effect at the time. This facility has been around since 1981, and somewhere between now and a long time ago, they were installed.
Nothing documented?
Mr. Chairman, if I can add to that for your information, the DRO was amended more recently, and it removed the permitted outdoor tanks from being, they're actually specifically prohibited now. And so that is why they're here tonight. Those priors were pre-existing and were approved and permitted at that time.
Thank you so much.
Certainly.
The other question here, I see that the facility is using just 2 of them, of the 4. As per application, currently 2 are in use. Why, what's wrong with the other 2? Aren't they being used? Or are they going to be decommissioned at a
They're not
certain
going to
time?
be decommissioned, as we'll get to when Mr. Dropstead from BMS testifies. We are experiencing a dramatic increase in the use of liquid nitrogen with our cancer research, and so we want to keep those 2 tanks. They're not in sufficient size to meet our current needs, and we want to keep them in case we still have further additional needs, particularly since now they are prohibited uses.
But they are being used.
No, 2 of them are being used, and 2 of them are not being used
Are
currently.
prohibited, or, I didn't understand really.
I'm sorry?
What's the condition of the other 2?
They are in good physical condition, but they
Okay.
are not being used.
Oh, okay. Thank you.
You're welcome.
That answered.
Other questions from the board for the attorney?
Mr. Miller
Questions?
asked my questions.
Okay. Questions from the,
And the only public here is BMS at this point, so you know.
well, sorry, we'll still ask
I
the question.
understand.
Anybody wish to, anybody want to tell their boss no? No, I'm kidding. Okay, moving on.
Okay, I'd like to call Mr. Sarati.
If you could raise your right hand, do you swear affirm the testimony you're about to give in this matter is the truth, the whole truth, nothing but the truth?
I do.
Please state your name, spell your last name.
My name is Chris, last name Cirrrotti.
Thank you, and can you briefly describe your background and experience for the board?
Sure. I have a bachelor's degree from Rutgers University in civil engineering from 1989. I've been a licensed New Jersey professional engineer since 1993. I've been practicing as a civil engineer for some 35 years now. I have appeared before planning boards, zoning boards on similar applications and matters all across the state of New Jersey, and I've been here before the Summit Planning Board, not before the Board of Adjustment, on other matters related to actually the Bristol-Myers campus.
Thank you. Any questions from the board, or would you like to accept his credentials?
I think we can accept his credentials. And
Thank you.
he's your
Thank you.
witness.
Mr. Sarati, can you describe the application for us this evening?
Sure. I'm going to begin with actually A2, Exhibit A2, and that is our overall site plan. So the property, as you may know it, is the Bristol-Myers Squibb campus located along several public streets, Passaic Avenue to the west, River Road fronts kind of on the north end, as well as Morris Avenue, frontage on Lincoln Avenue, Madison Avenue as well. And I think there's a piece on Evergreen. So that's the campus. The location where the existing tanks and the proposed tanks are I'm pointing to it on the left side or the west side of the S12 building. This building is probably most close to Passaic Avenue. That existing tank pad has, again, as was explained, it has 4 existing tanks on it currently. And the existing location of that is approximately 351 feet from the westerly property line and approximately 647 feet from the southerly property line. That's the location of really the existing and the proposed pad. There's, in terms of access points to the site, there's really 3 primary entrances. There's a contractor sort of service entrance off of Passaic Ave. There is a signalized entrance off of Passaic Ave for employees and visitors, and there is an entrance off of Morris Avenue. So that's sort of the orientation of the campus. Again, as I mentioned, the proposed tanks are to the west of the S12 building. I will move to my next exhibit, which is A3. And we can look at a little closer here. So the orientation of this is sort of north up, same orientation as that overall plan. On the right-hand side of the plan is that S12 building. Immediately to the west of the building is the existing concrete pad where the 4 liquid nitrogen tanks are currently. The proposal is to expand and to construct a new pad adjacent to it where 2 new tanks would be constructed. They are 9 feet 7 inches in diameter. They are 29 feet tall, and they have a capacity to store 9,000 gallons of liquid nitrogen. The 2 tanks combined have an area of 141.8 square feet, so that's sort of the building area as for this application. The pad that they'll be located on is 640 square feet. It's on an existing paved area, so currently these are 5 parking spaces that are paved, impervious cover. The pad will sit on about 2 3/4 of those 5 spaces, and then we will just hash out the adjacent space and take away those 2 parking spaces, but leave it as paved maneuvering room adjacent to the pads. So no additional impervious cover. There will be a new fence. We'll take down the piece of fence between the existing tanks and this new tank area, and we will construct a new fence, chain link fence, be vinyl, black vinyl coated chain link, 6 feet tall. There will be 2 gates. One is a man gate. 2 gates are required by code. One is a man gate at the southwest corner. There'll be a sliding gate for delivery and access into the pad area on the north side. There is no proposed lighting with the application. The existing lighting in the parking lot is not changing. There's no signage as part of the application. And next I want to just kind of look at some of the sight lines and the visibility of the tanks from various vantage points. So I'm going to move to Exhibit A5.
And the 4 additional lighting stanchions that were shown on the site plans, they'll be removed as part of condition compliance, correct?
Yes, they're no longer going to be proposed, correct. So this is Exhibit A5, and this is entitled our existing photo exhibit number 1.
So these photos are taken from, there's 9 photos here, I guess 10 if you count the double on number 1. These are taken from various vantage points, but from the interior of the campus. So the key map here on the top kind of shows where each of those photos were taken from, and I'll just walk through them kind of one at a time. So photo number 1 is taken from the edge of the parking area. It's about 2/3 of the way towards the residential properties. And as you can see, the location of the tanks, I'm pointing to it right here. It's in the center of the right-hand photo. The tanks are, again, quite some distance from even the interior edge of the parking lot. From location 2, which is a little bit further south, kind of looking at the back of the tanks, you can see the building in view, the tanks in view in that location. I should mention the existing tanks, 2 of them, they're approximately 10 feet in height. Two of them are about 10 feet in height, and 2 of them are approximately 15 feet in height. Those are the existing tanks. From location 3, this is a little bit more further north, but still along that western edge of the parking lot. That's this location here. A lot of landscaping. You can just about make out the tanks behind the landscaping and the berm there. Again, this is from the interior of the site. Photo number 4 is looking up the main access aisle. That is where there's access into parking. Again, probably the most prominent view are locations 4 and 5. They're actually similar, where in the parking lot, looking right up the drive aisle, the tanks are right up close to the building. Photo location 6 is from the southern parking lot, kind of looking at the back. Again, the tanks visible there. This is the close-up, which is number 7, taken immediately in the small parking area where the tanks exist currently. Location 8 is our most north and sort of east vantage point. Again, from the parking aisle, looking through the parking lot at those tanks. And then lastly, photo 9 is from the due south of the tanks, where actually there's some screen wall, other building elements that kind of screen them from view. So that's the existing condition. And I want to move now to some other views here from the property line. I'm going to move to exhibit A7.
I believe that's A6.
I'm sorry, A6. 5, 6, 7 is after this one. These are 3 photos that were taken from the property line. They were taken from a point, photo number 10 is the most southern photo. It's taken from where I'm pointing here to the sort of extreme southwest of where the tank pad is. Photo 11 is sort of the most proximate point along the residential property line, and then photo 12 is a little bit further north. And you can see, due to the screening that has been put in place in each of these locations, combination of the wooded natural buffer that's there already. The facility has erected a fence with screening on it. This has been in concert with various consultations with city officials over the past few years. And
as part of plans before the planning board, when we got the approvals for the solar canopies and site-wide lighting plan, we did an extensive landscaping plan of deciduous and conifer trees, which Mr. Linson worked with us extensively on and approved.
so those plantings are now starting to be in view. There are new evergreen plantings on the outboard side of that, but as is evident from these photos, there is no view at all into where we are. Again, from the closest point, 350 feet from the residential property line. So this just sort of illustrates that view. And then I wanted to show exhibit A7, which are some sections that we've drawn, just to give you a sense of what is in between those residential properties and the proposed tank location. So the first section here is section AA. Its location is this longer section. It's kind of I'll say perpendicularly out from the building. And that section, as you can see here, the home on the left, the extensive existing woods, the fence and the new plantings that are in the woods, parking areas,
some other berms, additional parking, more landscape, and then this is the location of the new tanks sitting next to the two rows of the existing tanks, so the 4 existing tanks on the far right. Similarly, the section BB, which is again at that minimal distance to property, to the residential property line location. That section shows the existing home, again, a band of existing woods, approximately 200 and, it's from 2+7, it's about 150 feet of wooded, a wooded buffer there, and then the parking, additional plantings in the parking lot and the tank farm. And that sort of just illustrates what the views look like. Wanted to move to A.
This would be A8 first, right?
A8,
Which
that's right.
is the,
That's, so this is Exhibit A8, the transportation route. The supplier for the liquid nitrogen, this is their current route. They basically come from Route 24, come along River Road, and then enter the contractor entrance into the site, and they maneuver then through the interior of the site, which is actually depicted on A1. And on Exhibit A1, a little bit hard to see perhaps, but we show 2 lines here, a green line, which is the inbound route, where they come in through the contractor entrance, traverse through the parking lot, come up to where the tanks are, maneuver back into a K-turn, take care of the filling, and then depart along the same route out the contractor entrance to Passaic Avenue. So it's pretty direct, and so that's the circulation in terms of how the deliveries are made now and would continue to be made with the new tank.
thank you, Mr. Cerati. That concludes Mr. Cerati's direct testimony. He's available for questions from the board and the professionals.
Shall we begin with our professionals?
How about we talk about this site circulation first? I recognize that it's the same circulation on site as it was before. Is it the same size truck now, or is it a larger truck?
That'll be, Mr. Dropstead will testify to that, but it's the same size truck as now.
Okay, all right, so that's helpful. Do you have any idea about how that changes some of the delivery schedules? Is it
Yeah, that'll all be in Mr. Dropstead's testimony, but right now, I will tell you that currently, at this time, deliveries come to the site every 7 to 10 days. After the if we get the approval tonight from the tanks, they will come twice a month. If we do not get the expansion of the tanks, they will come every 3 to 4 days.
All right. Just so the board knows, I just want to put it on the record that, since this came before the planning board first, my review memo states that it's addressed to the planning board. So there was no sense, I think we discussed it, there's no sense in me writing a whole new memo on it, so you'll have to excuse that it says it's addressed to the planning board. I just want to put that on the record.
We take no offense.
Okay, good.
I do.
I can maybe help expedite with your memo. Comments 1, 3 through 7, and 10 through 12 are informational, I believe.
Yes, yes.
Comments 17 through 21, the applicant will comply with. Comments 8 and 9, and 13 through 15, before we're finished tonight, will have provided the requested testimony. And then with comment 2, the applicant will, except for the requested variances, follow all requirements provided in the City of Summit development regulations, including but not limited to chapters 35-13.17 and 14.17. And with respect to comment 16, the applicant will submit the requested materials to the city building department as part of its application for a construction permit.
Okay. I'm good to go.
Chairman, just a few questions. Regarding And this may be for the other witnesses as well, but why did the tanks have to be so high? Is that something another applicant, or excuse me, another?
That'll be Mr. Dropstead, but it's really, that's how they come.
Okay. All right. Compared to the 10 and the 15 foot
Right.
existing. Okay.
It's the fact, that's how 9,000 gallon tanks, that's how they're made.
Okay. As far as the photos, who took the photos?
That's Ms. Berniger, if you want,
yes.
she's Mr. Cirati's colleague, we can call her up, swear her in.
Just
and-
wanted to validate that for the record. That you just
And they were taken when?
identified.
They were taken last week, right, Ashley? Yeah, last week.
Okay, and they, Mr. Cirati indicates.
Last month?
You-
Last month.
And you would
That was
certify
last
that
week.
and you would certify that they reflect the conditions of
Yes.
of the areas that they're shot of? Okay. You can't testify, he can.
I can vouch for that, sir, yes.
And then the striped area that's next to the tanks, the purpose for that?
It's just to not take away maneuvering room, you know, the tanks come in there, or I should say the tanker trucks come in there, and we just thought that it would make sense not to change it and just stripe out the areas so cars aren't parking there.
Okay. No further questions.
Okay, questions from the board?
I wonder if the variance we're agreeing to includes the 4 existing or not?
No, the 4 existing, as your planner explained, were constructed before the city adopted an ordinance that prohibits all above-ground storage tanks.
So there is no need for variance for remaining?
Those
That's
are
that's why it's called a
pre-existing
D2
non-conforming
Okay, thank you.
variance.
That answers.
Okay. Other questions?
A couple of general questions, and if you're the right person, that would be wonderful. If not, we can defer. Can you confirm or advise on whether or not, liquid nitrogen is any kind of hazardous, flammable, or explosive material?
I believe Mr. Dropstat will testify to that, but it's an inert gas.
Okay. And the second thing is, are there other options instead of doing a 29-foot tower versus, say, 3 shorter facilities? Was that ever considered? I'm just thinking of the sight lines being a very tall structure.
I don't know what other options were explored, maybe Andrew
Okay.
can elaborate on that.
But on one side, it's blocked by the building, and then as Mr. Cirati's testified too, you can't see it from the property line.
For those of us who haven't had chemistry, and I don't know how long, my understanding is that nitrogen is flammable. Am I
Well, that's,
wrong?
Mr. Dropstead can address that.
Okay. Because I will have questions about that and your insurer and a few other things. Okay. Okay.
They're publicly traded. I think they could be self-insured.
Well,
They don't, though.
no, insurance companies drive a lot of safety changes. That's
All right.
They wouldn't build it if they didn't have it.
I know.
All right, let's stay, let's
Okay.
stay on it.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Okay. Who was handling lighting? Were you handling lighting or
Yeah,
was?
there-
Okay, either I misread the fixtures I was looking at, but next to the tanks that are there, I saw beyond the fence, poles with lights lighting up the tanks. And you're saying you won't be doing that on the new tanks?
Correct. We're not changing the lighting that's already there. The lighting that's there
You
is
think that
sufficient.
lighting that's facing this way is gonna protect, or is gonna handle these tanks behind them?
The ambient light in that parking lot we determined that the lighting is, additional lighting is not necessary.
The lighting's for the parking, it's not to light up the tanks at night.
It's site, you're right, it's site
Well,
lighting.
except that they're pointing right at the tanks.
The
They're,
lighting was probably in place before, it was probably lighting up the
Well, I'm
parking lot
just-
before the tanks were ready.
just wondering why you would have, why would you keep lights that you don't
Is there any
need?
reason why you would illuminate LNG tanks at night?
There's no reason other than if you have to do service, and you can do that with a portable light. It's the preferred way to do it. It's very sort of, you know, these type of facilities, you know, they would light them up with spotlights and things like that. We don't want to do anything like that. We've already gone through a lot of effort to have the lighting conform to the city's ordinance, and we want to keep it that way. So we're not proposing anything else to be added.
There was an extensive lighting plan for the whole campus approved by the planning board.
And you don't want to revisit
We don't want to mess with that.
But we haven't seen it, and you're now here. Any other?
Just to follow up on your attesting that you won't be able to see a 29-foot tank. And maybe I missed it in the pictures, but, you know, being over there, I mean, first of all, the pictures are, like, the leaves are there. I'm not sure in the winter if you could see right through it or not. But standing on the street, like, there is a sight line. It's not that you can't see it, especially if you're around lots. There's approximately like 77 through probably 81 or so, right?
It's a combination of things. I mean, the grade is also dropping about 10 feet from the back of the properties to where the tanks sit. We're at an elevation, it's at probably a little bit more than 10 feet. So just a drop in grade. But the vegetation itself kind of really restricts your sight line to like way up in the sky. I mean, you can't even see the building, which is taller than the tanks, in the views from the neighborhood, even without leaves on the trees, because you've got the screening on the fence, you've got evergreen trees, and the sight line, you know, looking over that. By the time you go out to 350 feet, you're looking up at 40 feet in the air.
Maybe I'm taller than I thought, but I could see it. I'm looking for it too, obviously, right? So, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I think that, again, there is quite a, I would just represent, there is quite a bit of vegetation, even without leaves. There's a lot of wood to look through, just branches, limbs, et cetera. There is also the, you know, again, the screening on the fence. The fence has got fabric on it to you know, mitigate a lower view. And, you know, looking from the property line over that fence, you really are looking up above, you know, again, because the ground drops down above the elevation of the tanks. I think they're well screened, and that's our purpose, is to make sure that they are.
Thanks.
Other questions? Yes, sir.
Do you know the color of the tank?
I believe it'll be white.
So white. It sometimes helps with the visibility. If it's a lighter color, it's not as visible.
If there are no further questions for Mr. Cerati, I will call my next witness.
I still haven't asked the public. I know they're all yours, but I'm still gonna ask them. Anybody have a question? Seeing none?
Great application.
Please, move ahead.
I'd like to call Mr. Andrew Dropstead.
If you could raise your right hand. Do you swear affirm the testimony you're about to give in this matter is the truth, the whole truth, nothing but the truth?
Yes.
Please state your name, spell your last name.
Andrew Doppstadt, D-O-P-P-S-T-A-D-T.
Thank you, and can you briefly describe your background and experience for the board?
Yes, I'm the CTO, Capital Project Manager for the Cell Therapy Operations Group for Bristol Myers Squibb.
Thank you.
Great.
And we know what that means, right?
Not asking to be qualified as an expert, so.
Okay.
This is strictly factual about the operation.
Got it.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Great. Currently, BMS receives deliveries of liquid nitrogen at the site every 7 to 10 days. These deliveries are made by tractor trailer tanker trucks with a 6,000-gallon trailer, MC-388 tank trailer with CGA 341 exemption for low-temperature cryogenic liquids. BMS is experiencing an increase of 45% in liquid nitrogen use, which is causing an increase in deliveries. If the two tanks are not approved, then BMS would need deliveries every 3 to 4 days. If the two tanks are installed, BMS will receive deliveries once every 2 weeks, also by the same type of truck. Our supplier tries to schedule deliveries between 8 a.m. and 5 p.m. Monday through Friday, usually on Fridays. However, when the need arises, there are occasional deliveries made outside of these times and on an occasional Saturday. The tanks don't make any noise. If the two tanks are installed, there will be fewer truck deliveries, which will also decrease noise. and liquid nitrogen is inert and does not present a fire or explosive hazard.
I'm just not sure I got the right numbers here. If the tanks are approved, how frequent would the deliveries be?
Once every 2 weeks or twice a month.
Thank you.
That concludes Mr. Dropsted's direct testimony. He's here to answer any questions the board or its professionals have.
We'll start with the professionals.
I think I have my questions answered.
Can this witness just provide a little more thought about why it's so tall?
Yes, so the idea around the two 9,000-gallon tanks is to have future capacity for additional demand for our operations.
Questions from the board?
Oh, yes.
Oh, yeah.
So if you put in, say you were to install 4 new tanks, would you only need a delivery once a month?
4 of the same size?
Yes.
Correct.
Why don't people bury LNG storage tanks underground?
I do not know the answer to that question. I would say it has something to do with the pressure inside the tank and potential dangers of having it underground.
To a gas that's inert? Okay. Can't you have your capacity issue and storage issue solved with more tanks at a lower height? Is that not true?
It would be possible, but it would be less efficient for the use of the liquid nitrogen.
Okay.
Can you explain that?
Yeah, so there would be evaporation coming from the system. So the more tanks we had with more lines or branches having to go inside the facility, it would be less efficient if there'd be more evaporating to the atmosphere.
So just natural seepage,
Yes.
leakage?
Yeah.
Okay. Are there
Which is-
tanks? Sorry.
Which is the most dangerous part of the operation, is the expansion of liquid nitrogen. That's when it is expanded. It might, first of all, it depletes the oxygen around it, and it might cause human freezing, and these are the dangers of it. Anyway, I'm more concerned about the. I think the height is not my concern. Mainly, is the time of loading and up and filling and refilling. I mean, when you reduce the number of fills, that is a better solution, of course. However, have you considered any other option?
I'm not sure, I don't want to speak, well, I am speaking for Mr. Dropstead, but I can tell you.
Leaving-
What do you mean by other options?
Other options of having the same height of tanks, but losing some of the excavating a little bit to lower them below the existing ground. That could be also a solution. It might require some additional excavation that will be costly, but that will reduce the height without.
You know, they're deep within the campus. We've already had testimony from Mr. Cerati. They're not visible, so there's really not a reason to do that.
Okay.
I had a question about the deliveries. When you get a delivery, what are you saying now, once a week or so, and it's one truck at a time?
Yes.
And the delivery truck holds 6,000 gallons, which you said you're going to continue to use, but the tanks are 9,000 gallons, so.
Well, we're not gonna let them go all the way down to empty.
Yes, so we keep a reserve capacity in the tanks,
Okay.
and right now those tankers that we're using, we're not using all of the liquid nitrogen that could be brought with a 6,000-gallon
Okay.
truck.
Okay, and more chemistry for me, because what you haven't mentioned in any of this testimony is right next to these nitrogen tanks are some really large diesel tanks. And if something goes wrong on one side or the other, I don't know if things combine and you get a fireball or.
Things go boom.
Excuse me?
Things go boom.
Things go boom.
Things go
Um,
So I think it was Exhibit A3. You could pull that one up.
Because.
Yes, that
because
shows
what's
the
be-
tanks. I'll give a little bit of background.
Okay, because what's between them right now is a chicken wire fence.
Yeah, absolutely. So on the eastern side of the existing 4-tank pad, those are 2 liquid nitrogen 3,000 gallon tanks.
Right.
And then the other 2 on the pad are 2 CO2 tanks. And then down below, right there is our generator system. And to the left of that, we have a 9,000 gallon diesel tank.
Yeah.
I think with the distance,
Okay. I
there-
mean,
yeah.
I
know.
don't know. I just looked
Yes.
at that and are any of the parking spaces in the vicinity EV charging stations?
No, they are not.
So you're still going to allow people to park in close proximity to these tanks?
So right now, this area is blocked off. And the plan is that no one will be parking in the vicinity of this location on top of the additional fencing that would be put in place.
But the existing parking lots, parking outside of the immediate vicinity, yeah, there's a lot of cars there.
Just want to go back to your statement. Earlier, I believe your attorney testified that to Mr. Malay's comment, the 4 tanks, you just stated that 2 are CO2 and the other 2 are nitrogen?
Correct.
Okay. That was going to be one of my questions. So you're materially increasing your capacity from, you said 2 3,000s to?
Correct. We currently have 2 3,000 gallon tanks. We're looking to add 2 9,000.
Okay. It's a lot more.
Yes. Hopefully enough for the future.
But you'll still be using the existing 4.
Once we install the 2 9,000 gallon tanks, those will be the
Okay.
primary ones in use.
Yeah.
As of right now, it has not been determined what the use of those 2 other tanks would be, whether it would be to keep them up or decommission them or just keep them there as an emergency tank if there's any issues that happen to come with the 2 9,000s. But right now, once those 2 9,000 gallon tanks are installed, those would be the ones primarily used to supply the building.
Of course, yeah.
Can you
Makes
repurpose
sense.
those tanks for other uses afterwards? Meaning, can you put them as CO2 or some other gas?
I would have to look into that, but I think there's a possibility. I think a lot of them are COTS, commercial off-the-shelf tanks that may be able to be used for different purposes, if it's gas or liquid, so perhaps.
Why can't these tanks be built horizontally? So they're, 8 or 10 feet tall and 29 feet long?
I think that's also an option that could be there. I think right when we decided to do the tanks this way, we were talking with our engineers and it was decided that this would be the most efficient use of space as well as the most efficient way to connect them to the existing branches for the 2 existing tanks.
If you laid them horizontally, would they be exposed to more thermal?
Perhaps, yeah, perhaps.
Now, when I look at these reports that we got from our experts, you would have thought the fire department might have looked at this a little closely.
That
And you
surprised me.
and you kind of thought that the police department would want to make sure that nothing goes boom, because then they have to go and deal with all that. And the environmental commission, no response, no comment, nothing.
Well, and the fire
they-
department particularly build the code when code specifically says you can't build it. Was a tad frustrating.
Our zoning, yeah, our zoning code says you can't build it. Construction code will have requirements.
Mr. Chairman, we're picking up the slack.
But
We're picking up the slack tonight.
I'm just trying to figure out how we,
Just
did these guys not look at this report? Or, I understand Eric's busy building a firehouse,
It
but,
sounds like the downside is if you don't have these Just more deliveries.
Correct.
Right.
I just want to hammer one point. There are no shorter, fatter tanks.
Well, he said that these could go on their side,
Put on the side.
so they get
He
a lot
doesn't-
shorter.
Yeah.
There was a lot of study taken, I mean, we worked for a year to get to this point internally, and I do not even know, we don't have an engineer, I do not even know the tanks that can be put on their side actually exist. These are, I mean, storage tanks like this are usually perpendicular to the ground rather than horizontal. I'm not an engineer or a scientist, I can't verify that for sure, but in all my years of, representing facilities of this size, I've never seen them horizontal.
Any other questions? Any questions from the public? No. Anybody want to tell us what they think of this?
We
No.
still have the plan.
We still have another
We
witness.
still have another witness.
Oh, we still have another witness? I missed that, I'm sorry.
That's okay.
Why don't we go, if you're done with this one, we'll go to the next. Maybe we can get the right answers here.
I'll try, Mr. Chairman.
If you could raise your right hand, do you swear affirm the testimony you're about to give in this matter is the truth, the whole truth, nothing but the truth?
I do.
Please state your name, spell your last name.
Sure. First name is James, last name Kyle, K-Y-L-E, with Kyle McManus Associates, and we're located at 2 East Broad Street in Hopewell, New Jersey.
Thank you, and can you briefly describe your background and experience for
I
the
can.
board?
I have a Bachelor of Science in Environmental Planning and Design from Rutgers, which I received in 1996. I've been a practicing planner for 25 years. I'm licensed by the state as a professional planner. I'm also a member of the American Institute of Certified Planners. Our office currently represents about 24 municipal clients, much like Mr. Snikes' office does for the city of Summit. I've also appeared before over 240 boards in the state. I was part of the project team for the planning board application for the solar canopies and the lighting upgrade at the campus.
Thank you, and just to be abundantly clear, you said licensed by the state. I assume that means state of New Jersey, correct?
State of New Jersey, yes.
Thank you. Any
Only
questions?
two states that license planners, Michigan and New Jersey, so.
Any questions from the board, or would you like to accept his credentials?
We will accept your credentials and turn you over to your attorney.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Kyle, can you just give the planning support for the variances we are requesting this evening?
Sure. So just to let the board know, in preparation for this appearance tonight, as with every application that I work on, I've reviewed all the application materials, I've been to the site, looked at the DRO as well as the master plan. There's a couple of reexamination reports, and then going all the way back to the 2000 master plan. I've also reviewed the memos that were issued by the board's professionals. And we've obviously met as a team and discussed this application, the comment letters, so we've had extensive discussions about this application and the comments that we received from staff. So the reason, as Mr. Moore said, that we're here tonight, and as Mr. Snikes indicated, the tanks that were there were built at a time when there was not a restriction or prohibition on above-ground storage tanks in the DRO. So that change requires us to come here to get a D2 variance. And the difference is this is for expansion of a legally existing non-conforming use. So we have legally existing non-conforming above-ground storage tanks. We're seeking to add 2 more, so we require a D2 variance. As your board attorney indicated, there is a little bit of a lesser legal standard for a D2, and the courts have said in New Jersey that when you look at the negative criteria on a D2 variance, you look at it with a little less strict view because you're talking about a condition that already exists at the site or within the community rather than a wholly non-permitted use being built, as an example, a commercial use in a residential neighborhood, something like that. So we do require the D2 variance for that. There's also a corresponding bulk variance for the height of the tank. 15 feet is what's permitted under the DRO. We're proposing 29. As Mr. Moore had said, there was also a potential design exception or a waiver for loading area screening. We can talk about that one, though, at the end. So for the use variance, we're required to demonstrate both the positive and negative criteria. On the positive criteria, that is generally derived from the purposes of the municipal land use law. So there really are two that are promoted here. The first is the general welfare. So as we've described through Mr. Dobstad's testimony, we've confirmed that the addition of these tanks here at the campus will greatly reduce the frequency of deliveries of liquid nitrogen to the site. The benefit to that is, you saw the truck route exhibit that Mr. Cerati put up. That's going to reduce the number of trips that we have coming through the city from Route 24 over to the site and in. So we'll go from, if the tanks were not approved, as many as one delivery every 3 to 4 days to one delivery every 14 days with the tanks installed. So the benefit there is that we're reducing truck traffic through the city that's needed to get this product to the site for use. And as Mr. Moore said, this is critical to the cancer research that happens on this campus. So the benefit to that. Also, Purpose G is to provide sufficient space in appropriate locations for a variety of uses. Here again, these tanks are associated with existing research that happens on this campus. This is an appropriate location to permit these accessory tanks, particularly given the suitability of this site to accommodate them. So this is an office and research campus that's a permitted use in this zoning district. There are tanks that are already there on the site. And as we'll get into a little bit more in the negative criteria testimony, there's very limited visibility, and I myself went out there with Mr. Dobstad today, and we looked at this, and I've also obviously reviewed these exhibits that are before the board. So the visibility here is fairly limited. So this is a really good location on the campus to have these, particularly since they're servicing that building that we talked about, Building 12, which is immediately adjacent. I think that also the site's particularly suited to these. As we've seen through the exhibits that Mr. Cerati introduced, the line of sight diagrams, the closest residential house that we have along Passaic Avenue is about 400 feet. So we have about 350 to the property line, to the closest property line, and then we have about 400 feet to the closest structure along Passaic Avenue. We have a dense woods that are kind of in between those residential uses and the location where the tanks are proposed. I know a few of you went out to the site and saw it today. So the fence, as part of the planning board application, as Mr. Moore had indicated, we prepared a pretty extensive landscape plan that was submitted to the planning board, and we worked with Mr. Linson extensively on appropriate species, location, number of plantings. There was a pretty Herculean effort that we went through on that. That landscaping was actually recently installed. So much of what you saw, the hollies, the arborvitae, all of that was behind the fence that's on the BMS property, really needs a couple of years to get established and start growing so that it comes up beyond that fence and really establishes that evergreen, that buffer that we need to kind of supplement the deciduous buffer that's there. So if you saw, as Mr. Cerati pointed out, it's pretty dense wood, so the trees, the limbs, do provide some screening, but once we get that evergreen screening along the back of the fence established and that grows up, that's really going to close off that view in the wintertime. So you probably get filtered views, to your point, Mr. Curran, in the winter, but once that landscaping is established, we'll have a pretty solid buffer all around there. So I think given the location, as Mr. Cerati said, we also have, if you were there today, you saw there's some berming around some of the parking areas that also shield view of that tank location with additional vegetation on top of that. So it's a pretty isolated location in terms of any visual impact. The other thing I want to point out too is that Building S12, from really any of the views that you have on that west side, really provides the backdrop to those tanks. So these tanks are not kind of out in the middle of a parking lot where they're widely visible. Really what you're going to be seeing when you look in that direction is Building S12, and that's, I think it's 37 feet tall. So we're about 11 feet taller than the tanks, the 29 feet tanks that are proposed. So that's really going to be the backdrop that most people on the west side of this would see. And the tanks will kind of not be these standalone, soldiers standing in the middle of nowhere. That's really the backdrop that you have. So I think for those reasons, it's an appropriate location for a particularly suitable location on the property to put these tanks. So that covers the positive criteria. On the negative, there's really two aspects that we're looking at. The first is and is there any substantial impact to the public good? And that refers to impact to adjacent properties specifically under the case law. The second, in this case, is any impact to the intent and purpose of the zone plan. Here, we always talk about this in the planning world. Well, is the enhanced proof required for D2? Is it not? I think Mr. Snikes' opinion is that it is. So we'll address what's called the enhanced proof, and that's that the grant of the relief is not inconsistent with the intent and purpose of the zone plan, and essentially reconciling why this use should be allowed here when it's specifically prohibited under the DRO. So as far as the negative criteria, the first part, any substantial detriment to the public good, as noted previously, we have about 400 feet to the closest dwelling. We have substantial landscaping in between, landscaping that's only going to grow in further and provide additional screening as the years go on. We have the fabric that's on the fence. That provides a pretty solid visual buffer. I think that fence is 7 feet tall. So we have that kind of at ground level, which is most of the views that people are going to see from those backyards along Passaic Avenue. So if you're at ground level, that 7-foot fence at the, inboard of the property line is really going to block a lot of that view at the ground level. And then, of course, as I said, building S12 is the backdrop. So that kind of provides something that, these are not standalone features that you kind of just see in the middle of nowhere. So I think for those reasons, there will not be any substantial impact of adjacent properties, visual impact from this proposal and the grant of the variance. As far as the intent and purpose of the zone plan and the enhanced quality of proof, I did go through all the reexamination documents, also the master plan. There is no discussion about the intent of this standard. Now, from a general planning perspective, it's probably visually related. Tanks popping up at random locations, different businesses in town. Want to make sure we address any potential visual. I'm sure there was some safety concern as well. So when you look, and we've talked about this evening, as far as the visual impact, it should be fairly limited. The buffering situation, again, will only improve in the coming years as that plant material is established. We took great care in the planning board application to make sure that we were addressing concerns of neighbors. BMS has met with many of those neighbors, and that landscape plan that was approved by the planning board went through a number of rounds of discussions and specific discussions with property owners adjacent to make sure that we were addressing any visual impact concerns. So I think there we can address the visual. Safety-wise, as you've heard this evening, there's really no concern over the gas itself. There's no explosion hazard. So there's really no safety issue with the location of these tanks in any proximity to either parked cars or adjacent properties or existing buildings. So from that perspective, I think we can safely say that there's no substantial impairment to the intent of that standard. And then really, as far as the reconciliation required under the enhanced proof, the benefit to the community here is that we're going to reduce the number of truck trips to the site by installing these additional 2 tanks. There is, in my mind, it's not really a trade-off because I don't believe there's any significant visual impact. But that's really the potential trade-off is, can we reduce the number of truck trips? Can we address the visual? In my view, and having been out to the site, seeing the exhibits, and knowing what's going to occur with the maturing of the buffer in the coming years, I think that we can meet both of those goals. And I think there is a tremendous benefit in reducing the truck traffic to the site. And that's really how we can reconcile the grant of the variance in this case. As far as the bulk variance, honestly, the positive and negative criteria considerations are really the same here. For that increased height, again, 15 feet is what's permitted. We're proposing 29. I think the positive criteria, it's the same public welfare benefit, same appropriate location, purpose G. The negative criteria, it's all the same visual considerations as the use variance, and we think we've adequately addressed it with the location and the existing buffering. And then as far as the intent purpose of the zone plan, again, there's no real discussion of the 15-foot limitation on accessory structures. That's a pretty common height limit for accessory structures if you think about sheds and things like that. So in this case, I think given the location of the tanks and, again, all the visual considerations we talked about tonight, there's really no substantial impairment to the intent of that standard. I do want to talk quickly about the potential waiver for screening.
And really what it says is that loading areas shall be screened with landscaping, fencing, berms, walls, or any combination thereof, and any such screening shall not be less than 6 feet in height. The screening shall be sufficient to obscure the view of parked vehicles, loading platforms, and loading activities. And it talks about walls, gates of compatible color and texture with the building, buffered by deciduous and evergreen shrubs and trees so as not to be visible from neighboring properties and the streets. So we are not proposing any additional landscape buffering in the immediate area of this loading area where the tanks are. However, as I described, we have a pretty substantial buffering plan that we've put in place along the perimeter. So I think really what it does is achieve that goal of these areas not being visible to neighboring around. So if the board felt a waiver was required, the standard is that it either creates a hardship or that it's impracticable. Impracticable doesn't mean we can't do it, it just means it would be wise not to necessarily. So in this case, given the buffering that we have on the perimeter, I think the waiver would be justified because we're really meeting the intent of that standard by providing that buffer along the perimeter rather than around the immediate loading area. Mr. Chairman, that is all I had in the way of direct. I'm happy to answer any questions the board may have.
Mr. Chairman, that was a very thorough presentation. I think he's addressed all my questions, and also the statutory criteria. The board's information.
Ken? Nothing from me.
Is
What-
there any way you can show us how these tanks look like? A photo or?
Are they identical to the ones we saw out there?
They're similar, just taller, really.
Yeah, they're pretty close.
Trying to find a picture of it.
Okay.
The only thing I have, the picture isn't really doing it justice. The detail on, this is on exhibit A4. I mean, that's basically the vessel. It doesn't give it in context, but similar to the existing.
I can hardly see that.
Yeah.
Want to see the sections closer up?
Yeah.
Yeah, bring them up close.
Yeah, actually, the section.
I think we actually have that in our files.
We have that
drawing.
Well, which one?
CS 501.
Okay.
But this one here, actually, the section is, I want to point to exhibit A7.
Go right up.
Yeah.
Don't be shy.
CS 501, I have it here.
This is the exhibit. So there's the existing tanks and the proposed.
Yeah, it is much better than the CS. Thank you.
Other questions?
I have one question for Andy. Given that the DRO, I get the existing non-conforming, we've done it a lot in the past where we've cleaned these up. Should we include confirmation that the other existing ones are completely clean from a variance point of view?
No, we don't need to. That,
Okay.
as Ed noted, it's clear that this prohibition came in after those tanks were installed, so that legally they're entitled to stay as a pre-existing nonconformity.
Okay.
I think Krista's office has also addressed that.
Okay, any other questions from anybody?
I'm still struggling a little bit to understand, whether or not you can turn those horizontal or not. I've seen them around, horizontal, but considering the capacity that you're looking to build, you can just take one and lay it down and it would have ample capacity if you're keeping the other two. So I don't see any reason why you'd go up 30 feet if you don't have to, especially when it's prohibited.
It's a great deal, and unfortunately, I wish we had an engineer or scientist here to answer, but
Yeah.
but like I said, put about a year of time into creating this solution, and candidly, we're in a situation here where we're in a crisis and we really do need this approval as soon as we can get it to continue the cancer research.
No, I hear you. I understand the sense of urgency. You said you have 2 tanks that are not being used today, so it doesn't sound like it's much of a crisis as you're stating.
No,
But
they're used
no,
now,
yeah,
they
we
just
have
won't
to.
be used
Right.
once we get these tanks.
But we just have to clarify, because I think there was some confusion on that, as Mr. Dobbs said, clarified.
Yeah.
2 of the tanks are CO2, 2 of them are liquid nitrogen. So this would just add more liquid nitrogen capacity. The CO2 tanks are gonna stay and are continuing to be used, correct? Yeah, so
Okay, it's all 4 being used.
correct.
Only
Yeah,
2.
there was a little confusion on
Gotcha,
that in the
gotcha, gotcha.
beginning, yeah.
Okay.
Yep.
That's not what we read in the application.
No, but we're representing to you now, finally got here, and I apologize, application's my fault, that all 4 are being used now. 2 for CO2, 2 for liquid nitrogen.
That's an important part of the application, I think.
He's testifying to it right now. That's what matters.
That will be,
The
that
tes-
will
the
be
testimony in-
documented in the, I mean, that's what we reviewed prior to coming here, right?
That,
And
the
now we have
testimony
to-
is what you
things
have to take into
changed.
account. Nothing's changed, whether the application misstated something, I don't know, but we've heard the testimony tonight. That's how they're used. 2 for nitrogen, 2 for CO2.
It's a major change for me.
They're bound by the facts as they're presented during the hearing itself.
Can a CO2 tank be used for nitrogen? Can they be switched, the volume of what goes in them?
Well, I think both gases are used currently, so there's a need to continue the CO2 tanks for use in the current research and in the labs. Yeah, so I don't think you'll see a situation where the CO2 will go away and be replaced potentially with liquid nitrogen. I think both will be continued to be used.
Or the other way around?
Correct.
I'm thinking of a tank that goes up in the air and probably has how many stanchions to keep it up? Just, 4 or 5, something like that. And then you lay it down for 29 feet. That's gonna have all kinds of fixtures
Structure.
into the cement, et cetera, which, and I guess, I'm assuming they don't rust or anything like that, but they all have the potential for, it's 29 feet attached to the ground versus 29 feet up in the air. Which one's safer? And I don't know.
Well, it would have been nice if we had an engineer testify to all this.
Yeah,
But we don't.
and, yeah, we don't have the ability to substitute our judgment.
I assume that engineer was a part of this year-long process, but.
I'm
yet they're
sure
not here
he
tonight.
was. I'm sure they were. I'm sure it wasn't one person.
I'm just wondering how important it was.
Well, the other thing I'll say, so if you look at the drawing there, if we were to take those 2 tanks and lay them down side by side, Mr. Chairman, as you had said, 29 feet along the ground. Right now, we're installing bollards along the front of that installation to protect the tanks from any damage, from a collision. So right now, the tanker truck comes in and then backs down and fills the tanks. If you were to lay them down, first of all, it takes up obviously much more room on the ground. To your point, more attachment points to the concrete, more supports, things like that. The way this layout is more efficient is that those tanks can more easily be protected. There's less area, for potential, I don't want to say accident, but it's less of a, it's probably not the right word, target, per se. So if we stand them up vertically, it's just consuming less area on the ground. There's more area we would have to protect.
So you would
Via-
need more bollards.
Oh, for sure. Yeah, we would have to put bollards along the whole frontage there where the truck comes in and delivers. This is a much more efficient use of ground space there. And I think ultimately, look, at the end of the day, the real question here is there any substantial visual impact from the increase in height and the location? And I think that, you know, based on what I saw physically, and I know a few of you were out there as well today, the distance to the residential, the existing landscape screening, all that is really going to address any potential visual impact from this installation and the height. And really, anything you're gonna see from the west side is with building S12 as the backdrop. You know, these aren't gonna stand out to any great degree, you know, as if you view them from the properties along Passaic Avenue.
You said that, yeah, and this isn't your question, it's probably for the attorney. You said you had meetings with the neighborhood.
So it's
Can we
interesting,
understand from what their reaction, and I don't know if I'm allowed to ask, but I'll ask it
They
anyway.
were noticed.
Are we allowed to know what they thought? Obviously, they're not here. If they were opposed to it, they'd be here, I know that.
Right.
But
We did a
what
200-foot.
what did they say to you? What was their issues?
I had to call Mr. Cozen. He's the only neighbor who had any concerns, spoke with Mr. Cozen. Mr. Cozen, can you give your name for the record?
Peter Koza, K-O-Z-A.
And I'll swear you in if you could raise your right hand. Do you swear affirm the testimony you're about to give in this matter is the truth, the whole truth, nothing but the truth?
Yes.
Thank you.
Mr. Cozen, can you tell the board what your position is with Bristol Myers Squibb Company?
Senior Director of Facilities.
And are you basically in charge of the facilities at the Summit West Campus?
Yes.
And then can you talk about the email and telephone communications you had with the neighbors on this application?
Yeah, the neighbors asked me about the height of the tanks, and they asked me about the height of the building. That was their primary request.
And what was their reaction to your answers?
Well, I didn't give them the answers because I didn't have the answers at the time. So I knew that we were going to be coming here tonight. I told them that we would be here an hour before the meeting, and that we would be able to answer any questions that they had. We would have the engineers, and we would have everybody involved in the project here.
Except the engineer.
With the civil engineer, just not
The engineer we need. Okay. Okay. And questions from you guys? No. Thank you.
That concludes our presentation. I know there's a little concern about the height, but I think we've addressed the height. I think Mr. Kyle and Mr. Cerati have addressed the height. It's very benevolent purpose. Cancer research, the size of the tanks will substantially reduce traffic coming to the site. And with that, I urge you to grant this approval. Thank you very much for your time and thoughtful consideration.
Thank you. I guess at this point, I'm supposed to ask if the public has anything to say. Conditions.
So we have our usual one condition that we've noted before, compliance with those conditions noted in the board engineer's memorandum.
Right, that, the ones that we noted that we're agreeing with that were informational, and then one of them,
Right.
we just clarified that it's at the time of construction permit rather than
Yes.
condition compliance.
Yep.
Yep. You either did the testimony or whatever to satisfy the
Yes.
requirements.
That's all we have.
That's the only one?
Yep.
Okay. Who wants to start?
No, I'll start. I'm still struggling a little bit with the position of if you can't see it, it doesn't matter, right? So the 15-foot limitation and potentially options around, well, certainly options around multiple tanks, maybe less efficient, but still a possibility that were similar in size to the ones they have, or a larger tank on its side, which, again, it's hard to, I don't know if that's a possibility or not. But I think there were some options that could have been explored or at least spoken to. And, being there today, standing from the street, again, I'm not standing next to someone's fence and then trying to get a visual, but from the street down, there is visual. I'm not in the house, it might be different. And I'm sure when people are in their house looking out the second story, do you want to see, a 30-foot, cylinder versus a building? Probably not. So, just not sure where I am right now.
Anyone else? I'm again going to bring up the issue of health. If I was waiting for a cancer cure, and these are the special cures that they're doing, and I was waiting for one, I'd be a little upset if this got delayed too long and we didn't get these people what they need. It's one thing I think of. It's certainly a positive.
They're gonna get it. This is not gonna stop delivery, it's just, it'll be more frequent. So this is not gonna disrupt any cancer research or cancer.
I would hope it
discovery.
wouldn't.
That's actually not true, and I can get Mr. Dobstead to verify it, but with potential interruptions in the supply chain, it could have a very negative impact on our operations if we don't get this.
You did testify to the fact that you thought it was going to be a problem if you didn't get it.
Yes.
And I really would like to know what that problem is.
Well, if we're deliberating, they're not testifying.
Are we asking to come back up and supplement that
Yes, I
testimony?
am asking if they would do that, if I may. If I'm not allowed, let me
You're
tell
the
me I
chairman.
can't.
You can.
Yes, we have one supplier for our liquid nitrogen. If there was an issue based upon that frequency of 3 to 4 days, let's say there was, we had an average of 7 to 10 days previously. Now, if we are focusing on the 3 to 4, if we're hitting 3 more often, based on the telemetry of the tanks, we may run into an issue if a truck's not available to meet that timeline. We could run out of liquid nitrogen, which would have an impact on our overall product. It would be a loss.
I don't think anyone on this board is disputing the fact that you should increase your capacity.
Yes.
Right? That's not the issue. The issue is, it seems that there's a very real concern of this board that you've not properly considered all the options for storage. And you didn't even bring an engineer to testify to how you got to this point with 2 3-story tall size tanks on the site. And I think that's what's at issue here. I think, what we should do is have them go and sharpen their pencils a little bit, show us what options are available in terms of storage, and then come back with a thorough explanation of what's possible on this site. I don't know that we should be just blindly accepting that 2 30-foot tall towers is the only solution. And, the one that works best for them also happens to work best for the neighborhood and the city. I'm not convinced of that.
What I would like to do, and I would offer, is that we continue this hearing to the next month's hearing without any further notice, and we will bring the engineers with us who made these decisions, and then we will be able to explain the decision we made, hopefully to your
I
satisfaction.
think that would be extremely helpful.
We'll be happy to do that.
And if possible, revisit the application and eliminate all the discrepancy that threw me out.
What date works,
Certainly.
Stephanie? Here comes your date,
July 1.
July 1st.
Well, is there, Chris, are you available? Are you available? Are you available? Yeah, I don't think we'll need you, but all right, so July 1st it is.
July 1st.
Thank you.
Is there a motion to,
Yeah.
and you would waive the time for the board to act
Yes.
and all that?
Yes.
All that other wonderful, good
If
stuff.
Ms. Sulios needs me to send something, I'll send it,
And
but
without
here on the
notice.
record, I represent that the time period is extended.
Okay, and without further notice.
Yes.
Is there a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Vice Chairman Loiketz,
Yes.
Mr. Kieran,
Yes.
Mr. Malay,
Yes.
Ms. Toth,
Yes.
Mr. Feskins,
Yes.
Mr. Chanchuli,
Yes.
Chairman Steiner.
Yes.
The motion carries.
Thank you.
Thank
for
you
your
very
willingness
much.
to do this.
We'll see you in July 1st.
Oh, yeah. And if anyone didn't go to see the facility, we'll make arrangements if they want to go see it,
Thank you, Mr.
if that comes up. We have some other business to do. Resolutions for extensions. 119 Oak Ridge Avenue and 503 Springfield Avenue.
I move to extend 19 Oak Ridge, or can we do them together, Andy?
batch extend?
One at a time.
Okay.
Yep.
That's it.
Okay. And, I mean, both of these were fairly standard requests. I don't know, does anyone on the board, would you like any further explanation of them, or?
You all got the letters.
Yep.
Is there a motion?
Move on 19 Oak Ridge?
Yep.
Second. Doesn't matter.
Jay?
Okay.
Oh, do we need to roll call? or-
Roll.
Yeah.
Roll call.
Chairman Steiner,
Yes.
Mr. Malay,
Yeah.
Mr. Kieran,
Yes.
Vice Chairman Loiketz,
Yes.
Ms. Toth,
Yes.
Mr. Feskins.
Yes.
Mr. Chanchuli.
Yes.
The motion carries.
Okay, 503 Springfield Avenue, which is Bedrosians.
I'll move.
Second.
Okay. Chairman Steiner,
Yes.
Mr. Kieran,
Yes.
Mr. Malay,
Yes.
Vice Chairman Loiketz.
Yes.
Ms. Toth,
Yes.
Mr. Feskins.
Yes.
Mr. Chanchuli.
Yes.
The motion carries.
Resolutions.
Okay. So we have 24 Windsor Road. That's block 5203, lot 22, ZB-24-2233. That's Andrew Brown and Bianca Moreno. Do we have a motion?
Who are the eligible voters?
Oh, I'm sorry. The eligible voters are Mr. Yuko, Mr. Nelson, Ms. Zahn, Mr. Malay, Ms. Toth, Ms. Chifo, and that's it.
So you got two of them here.
So, yes, we don't.
Do
One-
you
one
want to
of you-
move or do you want to second, Damon?
So,
Okay, move it.
okay.
And I'll second.
Okay. Ms. Toth
Yes.
and Mr. Malay.
Yes.
Okay, the motion carries.
And then 80 Bellevue.
80 Bellevue, so that's block 1104, lot 9, ZB-24-2236, Michael and Kristen Applebaum. The eligible voting members, again, many of them are not present. It's Mr. Yuko, Mr. Nelson, Ms. Zahn, Mr. Malay, Ms. Toth, Ms. Chifo, and that's all we have.
Okay, well,
Okay,
second.
okay. Mr. Malay
Yes.
and Ms. Toth.
Yes.
The motion carries.
The annual report, Vice Chairman. It's in front of us.
Yes. You guys want to vote on it tonight?
Yes.
All right.
Is this the fastest it's ever been done?
The most times it's
Yeah,
ever been on the
June. You think
agenda.
This is fast. That's a good question, I think. Does anyone have any comments? The fiercest critic of this report is not here tonight, so I feel a little deflated. We're not up to verbal jousting on some of these points.
The one thing I'll say, because I think I know who added it, or who put it in the recommendations initially, for stacked parking is actually addressed in the DRO.
Yes.
And therefore, I suggested that we didn't need to say, let's put it in the DRO, and that's,
That was a great plan.
I was looking for something else, and there it
Yeah,
was.
but in fact, I was the one who was supporting
I
it.
guessed that.
And therefore, I wasn't that happy with the, the DRO speaks about it, but still, that's why we had issues with the building, that they tried to use the DRO, the existing DRO, to bypass the requirement for parking, to use and it was a very bad idea that was established. We're gonna see it soon when the building goes up. And I remember the fire chief wasn't happy about it. I'm not sure if you remember the background about this issue, that I opposed very strongly. I was against it, and I still think it was a bad idea. I mean, big facilities that require stacked parking or robotic things should be addressed separately by the city, not by developers. And that was my point of view. This is, we're allowing developers to create their own, to circumvent the requirements of the DRO. And I was very strong about it. Didn't work, and now having it being removed from the annual, I have to vote no. That's my opinion. And
I'm not familiar with that case, but from a developer's mindset.
No, you were not here.
You're right, I think it predates me. Every other city's doing stackables. I mean, every other city is doing stackables at this point. You go up and down the eastern seaboard, every major new development in an urban setting, in a
Yes.
semi-urban setting, is embraced stackable parking. So it needs to be done in a thoughtful manner.
But not on a private, on the city, I mean the citywide. For example, if you're building a parking garage by the theater, by the garage like here, that's fine. They could be stacked, but not a private developer. And the whole only purpose is to circumvent the amount of parking spaces required by the DRO. I found this is just a play around the DRO. That was for this certain case. We have another case here in Summit, which is in Summit Avenue, and I wasn't involved in that one. That was an old one. I don't know if that's you're familiar with that one in Summit Avenue.
Yeah, the Beacon.
Yeah.
Yeah, but that wasn't as bad as this one with valet parking at this corner where the senior citizens building is. You will all see it in the future, and you'll remember me.
Well, I mean, I've got I have the DRO on my phone, as one does.
It's a favorite.
Excuse me?
It's a favorite.
It's my favorite. It absolutely is one of my favorites, that and the master plan. But it does specify what is in stacked parking, and it does says that the feasibility of such parking systems to accommodate their associated land uses shall be subject to the Planning or Zoning Board of Adjustment review and approval. So that anybody who wants to put stacked parking into a building has to come to us.
It's
To
like
the planning
shared
board.
parking.
Or the
that's-
planning board.
To
Yeah.
the planning board.
Well,
And the
us.
planning board and the master plan should show where there is a need for that exception.
But with
It
that,
should not be
each
everybody.
case
If
is
I wanna
developed
put it-
individually. Each case gets considered individually,
right.
not,
So if I
not
have a-
bulk.
So
Each one.
if I want to have a stacked parking in my backyard, that's fine.
You have to come to the planning board or the zoning
Yeah,
board.
isn't that what you want? Is that the kind of control and review that you want?
No,
No.
no. This should be planned at the level of the city, not by the private. That's the change we wanted, and I worked with Stephen with that thing.
Amen.
That's
How would
what
that
we
work?
had in our mind.
No, hold on, I'm sorry, just, are you suggesting that, like, where we have R5, R10, R15, that we have a district that allows this? Is, like, I'm just not sure I
Yes,
understand
of
what you're.
course, yes, of course.
Okay.
I mean, by the station, by a public, let's say we're building a hotel that it requires that. But just to add, and in this case, we want, the developer just wanted to add more apartments. That's another good reason for me to allow stacked parking to give him more apartments. That is a bad idea. I don't know if you agree with me.
I don't know that.
actually don't.
Yeah, I don't
Yeah,
know
I
that
see you
Summit's
don't,
large
but I
enough
don't know with,
to
you.
mandate stacked parking in certain districts.
Yeah,
We're
but would you
talking
like to?
about two, one of them is built, the other one's proposed, it hasn't even started construction yet.
But they have
Right.
our approval.
This
They have
one,
it.
yes,
Yeah.
right.
Yeah.
But you want it mandated.
No, I did not say the
Oh.
word mandate. Please don't put words in there.
Okay.
Are you saying prohibited in other districts?
I didn't say prohibited.
No,
I
but that's-
said, I
so,
said
Aim, that's
what,
where I'm
what was
struggling to
done,
understand.
what was done here
Mhm.
in this situation was wrong. And I worked with Stephen, as he was the chair last time, and he's now on the planning board, I guess.
Right.
And we had this stacked parking that needs to be reviewed by the city, by the governing body. So they see where they could be acceptable. They should not be acceptable for everyone.
Mr. Malay, if I can offer,
you
are
take it
you
out?
saying that they should
I
be
took it
offered
out.
just for
Okay,
public parking?
may I suggest that as
Sorry.
long as we've taken it out this year, this is an annual event, I can ask, and you can ask last year's chair,
Yeah,
and you have the wording from that. And let's submit it back to the committee for next year, and we can bring it up again.
I don't mind. I think
That way we
this
can
annual,
pass
this
this
annual
report and
should
move it
go.
forward.
I mean, we should approve this annual because it's too late.
Right.
I mean, it's
Well,
about
it's clear.
time.
It's a lot
But the
earlier
only
than last
thing
year.
that was removed from that is what I supported mainly, and that's why I feel bad about it.
Yeah.
Okay,
I'm-
well,
I'm-
we'll bring
I-
it back.
I guess I misunderstood where you were going with that proposal. I thought that the DRO had already addressed it, and I apologize for that. I'm sorry.
Thank you.
Amy, can you, what is the, this one that hasn't been built yet that you had concerns with? Just so
Okay.
I can understand.
Tyrconnell Park?
Would you like
It's
that
across
we
from
discuss that
Bristol
of,
Myers Squibb, it's across from Bristol.
if you like, we can talk about that at a later stage, because this is something that is important for the city. We don't want stacked parking to grow everywhere. I hate to see that in Summit. Summit has a tradition. Do you want it in your backyard? Do you want it on your
I
street?
don't want it in my backyard,
Thank
but
you
I
so
think that
much.
surface parking
If the
is,
DRO accepts it.
is a very inefficient use of space, and that the more cars you can get off of a surface parking lot, the better.
That's not what was implied in that application, in the variance that we approved, and I rejected, of course. And you will see the building, you know where the old Chevrolet was? That was on Morris Avenue? That
Mhm.
block.
Yeah, I know where it is.
Yeah, that's
on the board.
exactly where they wanted to use
It's where the
stacked
five
parking
houses are.
to get enough spaces to allow for more apartments,
Mhm.
for the developer to make more apartments,
Okay.
which I think that wasn't a good idea.
Just
Do
so
we
I
really
understand,
need that stacked parking at that
within the
location?
DRO, do you have structured parking allowed like they did on Parmley? Like a garage? Is that a permitted thing, or is that something that's an exception?
Depends upon which zone.
Okay.
I think every garage has gone through the planning board. So
Okay.
we even the one downtown, we put through the zoning board. All right.
Okay.
We'll bring this back to the committee, but we'll pass the report tonight.
Don't worry about it. I'm gonna
Okay.
vote no for that, but I hope you will process that because it's about time.
Yes, we
Yeah.
will
Process.
definitely
Yeah.
make sure it goes to the committee.
Thank you for clarifying your position. I was
Okay.
reading too quickly.
Is there a motion to adopt the report?
Moved.
Second,
Second?
roll call?
Chairman Steiner,
Yes.
Mr. Karen,
Yes.
Mr. Malay,
Yes.
Vice Chairman Loiketz,
Yes.
Ms. Toth,
Yes.
Mr. Feskins,
Yes.
Mr. Chanchuli.
Yes.
The motion carries.
And my thanks to Scott for putting up all the things and getting
Just
all the
collated.
things out. And everybody got their say, and we want to make sure that we continue that process as we move forward next year.
Mr. Chairman, can I recommend that the next time we go through this process, we have a letter scheduled that we actually block out some time to go through all the proposed annual report notes and points that various board members are trying to make, so we can have this discussion, but on a,
We can.
like a
as
fully
we-
participatory basis.
Hopefully, we won't have as many new board members next year. And where we had the training sessions, we might be able to take an early
Great.
evening with some, some dinner and have all of those things come out in an hour and a half.
Excellent.
Terrific.
That sounds great.
Just,
Next meeting is next Tuesday with,
No, it's
next Monday?
The 10th, right?
It's Monday.
It's a Monday, and we will be here for a special meeting. You all got a nice big package today, and I would have a motion to adjourn.
Moved.
All those in favor?
aye.
Aye.
Good night.
Night.